Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, a Birmingham City podcast brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick, and I was due to be joined by my co-host Alex Dickin, but he's just told me that Blues are close to announcing something, so we'll wait on 10 Tucks to see what that is. Impeccably timed podcast while the Birmingham City world is changing outside of us. I will plough on with another co-host, Ryan Deeney. Sorry, Ryan. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, all right, thanks. Yeah, but I have to admit I'm distracted now as to what might be going on. I wonder if it's the Neumann deal or something like that. But if it breaks, we'll do a hot take and we'll see where we can go with it. The purpose of today's podcast, just to lay the table a bit, is just to make sure after 23 games of the League One season, I want to make sure we're all right. Because if you go on social media, the temperature and the narrative would suggest that Blues aren't doing very well at all. But if you look at all the other indicators and go to matches, indeed, then it does seem to be fine. I suppose the risk is, I think, Ryan, is if you take the temperature of a fan base on social media, it's a bit like putting a thermometer in a kettle to find out how warm it is outside, isn't it? So it's not a very accurate indicator. But Ryan, we'll come on to it in depth, but just briefly at the moment, is everything okay? Are we okay? Is the show still on the road?
Yeah, I may not have helped with that by saying Tuesday was nowhere near good enough, which was probably a bit of an overreaction, but yeah, probably not helping. I think we're fine, aren't we? We're top of the league. We're in the fourth round of the cup. We're in the quarters of the Virtue Trophy. Like, everything we set out to do this season, we are doing, and we are now in January, where presumably we're going to take another step forward in the market in terms of the squad, and then yeah, we move forward, don't we? It feels like, you've seen the stuff about. I mean, Huddersfield have obviously gone big this month, but they're a bit fairly far off us at the moment, aren't they? Wickham have obviously had the managerial change and all their stuff, and we're just plodding along. We've still got the best points per game ratio in the entire EFL. I think people just maybe expect a little bit more in terms of, we're going to spank a few teams and breeze through this, but we're winning football matches, we're top of the league, and we're qualifying for everything we want to qualify for, so we're doing really well.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we will come on to that in more depth. Let's just check in about Swindon. As you said, you weren't massively impressed, and I don't think anyone who watched it would have been hugely impressed. It certainly wasn't Blues' best performance, even of the week, arguably. But there were mitigating circumstances. Overall takeaways from Swindon, Ryan? Pitch didn't help, did it? The team selection didn't help. What were your thoughts?
It's one of them where I started writing up the report, and when you're watching the game, I think sometimes you can get a bit frustrated with how casual we can look. It felt like, players were taking too many touches. They weren't moving the ball quickly enough. There was times where, say, Laird's just completely open on the right-hand side, and we played backwards, we played simple, and it just felt like, we were taking too many touches and things just weren't as fluent as they should be. Obviously, here afterwards, there was concerns around the pitch. And then you start looking at the game itself and remember that, Swindon scored with their only real shot on target. Only had a couple of shots all game. Harris had the shot on target early on. May had his effort. The cross that Yokoyama produced that ended up with Kirkman hitting the bar. Wright just sort of squeaking behind a Yokoyama cross, Laird's header, and then the two goals as well. So really, we were the better team, and I suppose really comfortably the better team. It just felt like Swindon maybe just had a bit more energy and a bit of more aggression and sort of fighting their play, whereas we just looked like we were barely in first gear and just sort of hoping we could just skate through without having to really put our foot on the gas.
Yeah. I do think the omission, it turns out, for sort of reasons of resting of Pekka Iwata, that really does change the nature of the team, doesn't it? That midfield stranglehold and, Iwata's physicality and just how robust he is when he goes about his work, and Peck's constant availability and busyness. Gardner Hickman and Leonard, they have different qualities, but they're not quite the same. And if you've got the ball sticking on that pitch, then I think you go some way to explaining that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a strange one, isn't it? Because Leonard, it probably is a championship footballer. Like, he's a very, very good footballer, and there's a reason why so many clubs wanted him in the summer. Peck and Iwata are just Peck and Iwata. Like, there's reason I think people are talking about them like they could be Premier League footballers, and you wouldn't put it past, if we go on the journey we're expecting to go on over the next couple of seasons, whether they're actually part of that. If we do go into the Premier League, they're potentially part of that Premier League team. It just feels like they're at that level, particularly in the way they just move the ball, keep it controlled, and I suppose the athleticism as well. I mean, it always surprises me when you get those little bouncing balls in midfield, how high Peck can jump to win those 50-50s, and they're just unbelievable footballers. And I do feel a little sorry for Leonard, but those two are they're unbelievable footballers for this level.
Yeah, indeed. Don't want to dwell too much on Swindon. The last thing we'll say, or the last question we'll ask, is Yokoyama clearly man of the match, or in my view, clearly man of the match. Was it? I'm gonna shape the Lincoln game as a step backwards in Yokoyama's first team claims. I'm also going to present that the Swindon game was a step forward in his first team claims. I guess also helped by the fact that Willemsen's picked up an injury, and the players available in the attacking three not quite falling like flies, but almost by default Yokoyama's getting pushed up the pecking order, isn't he?
Yeah, you'd imagine the goals are probably enough to put him in the squad. And let's be honest, with Anderson out, Wright not fully fit, Stansfield not fully fit, you probably maybe need certainly that option if you are chasing the game. I'd imagine a lot more of the focus will be on the Lincoln game rather than the Swindon game, just because of the quality of opposition. And yeah, I'm still probably of a mind to say that he's not going to start against Exeter. I think if any of the wingers do start, it's probably going to be Scott Wright. I'd imagine Luke Harris probably gets a nod ahead of him. And even Gardner Hickman, who played across all three positions over the last couple of games in the league. I'm assuming Yokoyama's still, he's probably on the bench, like you say, out of just purely the fact that we don't have any options at the moment. But
I
don't think he's going to start him.
I think it was a step forward, Swindon, to be fair. My favourite moment wasn't the goal, although the goal was a really neat finish. It was in the first half where he actually went outside Sabawale, the right back, and put the ball into the middle, and that's when Swindon ended up hitting their own bar. It's that he doesn't have to do that all the time, but just do it once or twice in a game, just to keep the fullback honest. That for me was a promising sign. Obviously, the knock on is always the work back, isn't it? And I thought, Swindon didn't really ask any questions, did they, down that side? And what questions they did ask, Alex Cochrane seemed to answer most of them. So, yeah, progress for me. But as you say, probably the Lincoln game carries more weight in Davies' mind.
It wouldn't surprise me. We don't know how fit Bielik is yet, do we? But if Bielik is fit, it wouldn't surprise me if we end up going back to Bielik at right back.
Yeah,
Cochrane maybe playing higher up on the left, and then maybe it's, I don't know, possibly Gardner Hickman or Wright sort of playing as the out-and-out winger on the right-hand side. So when you look at it, if it does get sort of reframed like that, so it's the left back and the right winger that are holding the width, chances are that Yokoyama doesn't start because, well, he's not going to be trusted to stay out on the right-hand side, as he tends to only really play off the left. So,
yeah, indeed. Right, moving on. Just let's have that check in now. Our Blues, are we okay? Just to sort of produce a couple of stats. Blues going into the game tonight. They are the Wrexham game tonight. Blues are top by 2 points. They're in the quarterfinals of the Virtue Trophy. They're in the FA Cup fourth round with a really mouth-watering clash against Newcastle United to come next month. It may not be passing the eye test, but does it pass the smell test? Would you say, Ryan?
Well, you've put down on the running order marks out of 10, and for me, like 9.5. I don't see
Wow,
what more.
that high. Go on, explain that.
I don't see what more we could actually be. Like I say, the only thing we're really missing is that big 4-5-6-0 scoreline. But ultimately, the job that Chris Davies was asked to do was to come in, win football matches, win the league, hopefully win the Virtue Trophy, barring some kind of misfortune, which we may have got away with it a little bit on a Tuesday, but at the same time, we were still the better side and the players did the job. I pulled some stats up in a piece of it recently, and I think when maybe it's trying to frame it a different way, but the last 12 sides that have won promotion from this league have all started the season with the same manager that they had going into the season. 10 of them kept the same manager throughout the season, and the only two that changed were Sunderland and Oxford, who had late runs into the playoffs and won promotion that way. And when you look at the number of players that have played pivotal parts, 70-75% of minutes, most of those players have either signed before 1st of July or they were already at the club, and the majority were already at the club. I think the only real outlier was Wigan under Liam Richardson when they got the money in, and they signed a load of, League One stalwarts, the likes of Max Power, Charlie Wyke, and players like that. So while people will look at the money we've spent and say we should be doing this, I think when you reframe it from the point of view of we are doing it in such a different way to the way that clubs normally win promotion, in terms of not bringing in League One stalwarts, not going down the sort of experienced pro route, bringing in so many players late. I think only 3 or 4 of our players had a full pre-season with the club. So when you think that we've kind of been putting together everything as we've gone, not to mention obviously new manager, new coaching staff, new facilities and all the rest of it, we are going about things in a different way. And it's been a big job for Davies, not just to, have this squad with so much luxury, but also put things together to make sure this group learns how to win football matches, is learning on the job in terms of how to react to things that are happening on the pitch, reacting to different opposition. I think Davies outlined it the other day, didn't he, talking about how, the face teams with teams that are good from set pieces, teams that sit in a low block, teams that just have very little interest of going to tackles, teams that press high. And we're learning about it all on the job. And for the first half of this season, we have won, so many football matches, and even the draws, it's kind of felt like we've dropped points we ought not to have dropped. So I think across the board, to frame it in that way, that we are doing something so different to be where we are now and going into the second half of the season from such a strong base, I can't see any reason why 9 is the minimum out of 10.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna go. I was gonna give 8. Then I thought, no, that's really unfair, because what more could they have done? I'm gonna go 8.5, and I agree with everything you've said, other than the 9.5 bit. I think the problem is mine. I think the problem relates to the fact that I was expecting more. Now, that's for the reasons you've just said there, the complete standing start. Maybe I was wrong to expect more, but you just looked at the South Korean international, the Japanese international, you looked at the £50 million striker, you looked at the 2 Iceland internationals, you looked at the sheer weight of this recruitment and the sheer weight of quality players coming to Blues. And I have to say, I did think that they'd be winning 2 and 3-0 most weeks. So I think that's why I stretched to 8.5. I think 8.5 out of 10 is still a very, very good mark. I do also feel there's still, in matches, there's still an awful lot of meat being left on the bone. I think Blues can create more chances. I think they can take more chances. You could probably just throw in 2 or 3 more set piece goals and everything suddenly feels different. They don't score off set pieces enough. So I think what I'm basing my 8.5 on it's probably based on aesthetics, isn't it? I'd love them to see the ball, move the ball quicker. I'd love them to see them get the ball in the box more often. This is probably Chris Davies probably won't hear this, and if he did hear it, he'd probably think, well, that's all rubbish. The machine is not built to operate that way, and I totally accept that. But it's not been massively entertaining, but it has been extremely impressive. Let's say that. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10 for me. Before we come on to Davies and his performance, which you sort of started going into a little bit, why don't Blues spank teams, Ryan? Why haven't we had that 3-0, 4-0, 5-0 situation so far?
It kind of feels like there's a lot of different reasons. It might depend on the games sometimes. I mean, we've had games where I think, just off the top of my head, you look at Huddersfield, you look at Bolton, Mansfield that first half, Northampton that second half. We really could have scored 3 or 4 in those games, and we didn't. We've also had games where we kind of don't really need to push for the second goal or third goal because we're so comfortable in the game. So I think, again, Burton's probably a prime example where they had that one chance and then that was pretty much it. I mean, even Northampton, even when you look at Northampton, I mean, they scored in the last minute, but really, we were so comfortable in that game. And I think it's just those things where, and maybe this is part of the deal for Davies, where he's thinking, we're ahead, let's make sure that we don't do anything to lose that lead. And if we can get the goal, then we get the goal. But
I absolutely think if you're sort of starting to hint towards us, there's a risk, not risk aversion, but there's a risk management philosophy that comes in once Blues are 1-0 or 2-0 up. I think that might be sort of hinting at the right answer here, personally.
I mean, it was mentioned by Alex on this podcast the other week, sort of a reminder that, Davies said himself in pre-season he's a pragmatic guy. And I think we've seen that through the season. Probably the best look at that will probably be his use of Taylor Gardner-Hickman in recent weeks, where he started right wing against Stockport, didn't he? And then was he left wing against Wigan, and then sort of dropped into the 10 after that. And basically because he knows in someone like Taylor Gardner-Hickman and probably Luke Harris as well, which I know he's received a bit of pushback from fans. Those guys, even if they're not producing goals and assists or anything like that, they're doing a role for the team that ensures that the team shape and the way we play continues. They don't let us down. They just probably don't give us that extra bit that we're really hoping for from the attack. But I think that becomes just as important as that becomes just as important as
sort of entertaining people.
I got sidetracked. I think the will to see someone like a Yokoyama probably is more exciting for the fans. But in someone like a Taylor Gardner-Hickman, when the right wing back does make that bursting run and we do get the press wrong, that Gardner-Hickman is going to be there to win that challenge and then just keep the ball and keep us moving, and that becomes just as important as scoring a second goal and either winning 2-0 or drawing 1-1 compared to just winning 1-0.
Yeah, indeed. It is all about the machine and the team and the mechanics of it all ticking over. I get that. Yeah, absolutely. What have you made of Chris Davies? Is assessing performance against expectation? I think it's important in my mind to frame it that this is this guy's first job as a number one, and the responsibility is enormous, isn't it? He's been given, they say to whom much is given, from whom much is expected. And this is very much sort of the brief that Chris Davies has got. Yes, he's got all this wealth of quality players, but, they're even second place, promotion would be good enough. But I think even second place would be viewed as failure with a small f, wouldn't it?
Funnily enough, this is probably outside of Blues itself, but I shared some quotes from Dan Ivory talking about sort of the fine. I think he did a piece about the transfer window and sort of talking about budgets and all that sort of stuff. And it was thrown back to me that it's an absolute, it's basically terrible if we don't win the league by an absolute landslide and break every record. And I think the expectation comes as much from everybody else outside the club as it does from inside the club.
Yeah.
Again, like I can't. Obviously, I've sort of framed it in the way I did earlier on, and I can't really say anything less than a 9. Like I say, you do wish sometimes he may take that risk and maybe, task the team with getting the 3rd and 4th. At the same time, his job is to win football matches with the greatest respect. I mean, you look at someone like an Arteta in the Premier League, or even Maresca at Leicester last season, which maybe there's similarities there in terms of style and sort of why they approach the game.
And actually, Leicester fans are I don't know if discontent's the right word, but there were rumbles about the playing style from Leicester fans when they were careering towards the Championship title and virtually promoted by February. It didn't work out that way, and it might not work out that way for Blues. There might still be a little bit of negotiation to be done in March and April in terms of what other clubs do. But yeah, go on. Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, you're right. To be fair, I think the biggest test is going to come over the next few weeks, isn't it? When you look at the fixture list, so we've got Wrexham and Huddersfield away coming up. We've got Bolton to play away. I think Peterborough away as well, and a couple of other difficult games here and there over the next sort of 6 weeks or so. So I think that'll be the big test. But yeah, in terms of his performance so far, we outlined it all earlier. We're top of the league. We're best points per game in the EFL, in the quarters of the Virtue Trophy, FA Cup 4th round. Like, yes, we could probably go a little bit bigger in terms of trying to really kill teams, but at the same time, we're winning football matches and we're winning them regularly, and it feels like we're actually getting better at winning those football matches as the season goes on. So for me, again, you're sort of looking at a 9.5 performance for me, because I can't fault the results.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a results industry, to use a fairly lame trope, and Davies is producing those results. I'm going to give him a 9 as well. I think Davies is doing slightly better than the whole sort of collective team is, sort of thing. I've go on.
I was just going to say, I think it's worth probably noting as well that while we can't use any excuses for unavailability or anything along those lines because of the depth we've got. When you consider that Scott Wright's missed 3 months, Emil Hansen's essentially missed 3 months. We've got, who else has been missing?
Keshi's missed a lot.
Keshi's missed a fair bit of football. Harris had 2 months out. So the actual attacking function of the team, we haven't really had the players that you'd expect to come in and do the creating, the scoring of goals and helping out the forwards, which is why we have seen a lot of, May playing as a 10, Dykes playing as a 10 recently, Stansfield playing off the left. I can't imagine he's outlining those roles for those players. He's making the most of the sort of availability that he's got and having to, chop and change. Yeah, so I think his ability to win football matches and keep us winning football matches while we don't actually have those attacking players is a credit to him, really.
Very fair point. The sands are always shifting, and by the time you factor in what opposition teams are trying to do against Blues, and Davies barely has the same attacking players 2 weeks running, then yeah, I think that's a very good point. I also think I've seen signs of development in him as well. I thought at the start he was very stubborn, persisting in playing Jay as the 9 and Alfie behind him. There's been a recalibration of that. Yes, May has still played. I think against Blackpool, wasn't it? He was the deeper of the forwards. But by and large, when May plays, he does play as the 9 again, and undoubtedly that gets the best out of him. And Jay, you can say whether Jay might be better as a 9, but I'd say he's better behind than Alfie is, sort of thing. So there's been development there.
I think there was talk earlier in the season, weren't there, about him being like Postecoglou is very sort of set in his ways in terms of the way he sets his team up, and actually when you consider he spent a lot of time under Brendan Rodgers, who has an ideological philosophy of how he sees the game, but he's proven over the years that his ability to, essentially forego that in order to benefit the team that he's got. So things like his Swansea being a total 4-3-3 side and then nearly win the league with Liverpool with that sort of rampant 4-2-2 and utilising his two strikers. I think Davies has shown a bit of, again, pragmatism in terms of his ability to chop and change and switch things around when it's needed.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's anything like has talked himself into a corner in the way that Postecoglou seems to have done. So, yeah, fair points. Chris Davies moving along nicely. There's just quickly do this one. We don't need to spend ages on this because the breaking news has broken, and we'll come to that before we sign off. Ryan, who's your player of the year so far?
I gave this some thought. I'm going to say Tomoki Iwata. I think there's probably 3 or 4 players you could chuck in there, but I think Iwata is coming, and I think the fact that he started all 5 games during the Christmas run just shows how important he is to the team in terms of his ability to break up play and the goal threat that he provides. Yeah,
I've gone Alex Cochrane. I think was he one of your other names that you were pondering?
Yeah, I had Cochrane, Peck, and Clara.
Yeah, indeed. Cochrane, because I think alongside Peck, he's probably been the most consistent. I think he has provided. He's carried the can at left back so long on his own, and I think he's played left back in different ways as well. Sometimes it's been him that's been released forward as the width on the left. Sometimes he's had to tuck in, and play as the third centre half. I actually think when he goes forward, I think his delivery into the box has been very good. Does he defend his back post? If someone sticks a high ball on him, he tries. It's not clearly. He hasn't got the skill set to do that. I think he's not brilliant in the air. It would be, it would be very harsh to criticise him on that. I don't think he's put a foot wrong. I really don't. I think he's been an absolute steal, arguably the signing of the summer. So Alex Cochrane for me. Other names in the hat, I would say probably I'd say Clara, and I would have said Iwata, and I probably would have said Jay as well. But let's move on. So the breaking news is that Garry Cook has stepped down from his role as chief executive at Blues. Blues have put out a statement, which I'll read. And Ryan, you can sort of codify your thoughts while I'm reading it. The board of Birmingham City Football Club announced that Garry Cook has today stepped down from his role as member of the board and CEO. The board has accepted Gary's decision, which he's made for personal reasons, but pleased to confirm that he's agreed to remain a member of the club's advisory committee. He's also to continue to serve as trustee of the foundation. The club extends its deepest gratitude to Garry for his leadership and numerous contributions, including enhancing the club's infrastructure and fostering positive experiences for fans and colleagues. Tom Wagner says, we thank Garry for everything that he's done during his time as CEO. His passionate leadership and commitment to the football club has been supported. He is supported from boyhood, has been unwavering, and his contributions are extensive. It goes on to say that to ensure a smooth leadership transition, Jeremy Dale, the man who brokered the takeover, will assume the role of interim CEO effective immediately. Jeremy has been a vital member of the club's leadership team, bringing unwavering passion and dedication to every role he's undertaken, most recently as vice chair of the foundation. Reaction to that. Ryan, that's from my point of view. It seems pretty much out of the blue, no doubt, if it's personal reasons, and I'm not going to ask either of us to speculate on what those personal reasons are because I don't think that's fair. Thoughts about Garry Cook? Quick early takes on Garry Cook's time at the club.
I think when he first joined the club, there was an element of nerves around the way he left Man City and sort of some of the faux pas that he maybe had previously. But I think when you look at how far Blues have come, particularly around all the sort of commercial and the facilities development and stuff like that, it seems like he's played a pretty big role in being that he's been at the forefront of the forum meetings. I forgot the open houses. He has shown his face a fair amount and sort of stuck his neck out, or been the guy to produce the statements and so on when there have been changes that have been made. I suppose the only real major sort of downfall of the ownership so far has been the appointment of Rooney, which, other than that, I think the club have gone from leaps and bounds in the last 18 months or so, and obviously Garry Cook has clearly played a massive part in that. So from my side, I suppose, as a thank you, and in terms of judging whether it's the right decision for the club moving forward, whether Garry Cook wanted to step down or not, depending on the personal reasons, I suppose we're only really going to find out in time, aren't we?
Yeah, indeed. I suppose it's the similar adage to a football manager. They've all got a shelf life. If they leave the club in a better position than they found it, then they've probably done a good job. And undoubtedly, Blues are in a better position now than when Garry and his knighthead paymaster sort of came in. Listen, if you want to be devil's advocate, you're always going to point to the Rooney appointment and the no fear stuff, and that was undoubtedly a misstep. Is it fair to just point at that and ignore the rest of the progress that's been made away from the pitch? It's certainly not. It was a mistake. I think we have to file it under mistake and move on, and also consider the other variables. Now, you go to St Andrews now. It's a pleasure to be there, isn't it? It's a fantastic football stadium. The atmosphere is better. You look at the improvements that have been made, in the non-footballing areas of the club. Some of the commercial deals that have been struck. The purchase of the land at Wheels for the new stadium, the development of the Henley and Arden Training Centre. Garry Cook has been involved in all of this, and I think we have to, say the club is unrecognisable. And yes, it helps that Knighthead have been putting their money in, but putting money in, we've seen many times with other football clubs, owners simply throwing money in. In fact, we've seen it at this football club. Just simply throwing money in doesn't guarantee all the improvements and the advancements we've seen at Birmingham City in the last 18 months, 2 years. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens, where they go next with their next appointment. All I would say, and I was a massive critic of the Rooney appointment. It didn't feel right at the time, and I think subsequent events at Plymouth Argyle have proven that it wasn't right. But Garry Cook's tenure was about so much more than that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Anything to add, Ryan?
No, I think you've summed it up better than I have. Like I said, the club are in a far better position than they were 18 months ago, and as a CEO, ultimately your job is to preside over the improvement of the football club, isn't it? So if the business has improved and you're leaving, then presumably you've done a very good job in your time there.
Yeah, just to draw a final point from the club statement, it says the club and its leadership team remain laser focused on driving continued success both on and off the pitch. As part of this commitment, the search for a permanent CEO has commenced, and Birmingham City remains steadfast in their dedication to delivering meaningful results that honour the legacy of the club, while enriching the experience for our fans and the wider community. So they are looking for a permanent successor. And with that, all that remains is for me to thank Ryan for his time and to thank you for your interest. Be interesting to read your thoughts. So if you want to leave a comment about Garry Cook's time at Blues, that would be really interesting to look at. So yeah, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody. And it's a heartwarming keep writing.